Hi, I'm Mike Austin with Car and Driver, and I'm coming to you from Morocco, where we're doing the global launch of the all-new Range Rover. We're here to test the Range Rover's multifaceted capability, everything from highway driving, sand dunes, rock crawling, and mountain passes. A new Range Rover doesn't come along very often. The original one dates back to the early 70s, and this brand new one is only the 4th generation. It's all new, and there's a lot that's changed. The all-aluminum construction from Jaguar has now made its way into the Land Rover lineup. The benefit of this is weight savings. The new Range Rover is 700 pounds lighter than the one that came before it. You can feel the weight difference behind the wheel. It's lighter, it's more agile. You take out all that weight, it's a lot less mass to move around. To enable this all-aluminum construction, Land Rover completely retooled their factory. It's now the world's largest aluminum body shop, and the side stamping on the unibody is the world's largest aluminum stamping. There are other benefits to the aluminum as well. With this generation, Land Rover is making a big push about the sustainability of the car and its overall environmental friendliness. Land Rover puts the chassis together using rivets and glue instead of welding, so it takes less energy to construct. About 50% of the aluminum in the body is recycled, and the tailgate's made out of plastic. A lot of that's recycled as well. While designing the 4th generation, Range Rover asked their customers what they wanted, and the overarching message they got was, don't change it, just make it better. And one of the improvements is the wading depth is now 34.5 inches. It's up almost 8 inches. So you can drive this through the water basically right up to the bottom of the hood. On the old car, the air intake was actually in the side vents right by the door. The new car has them tucked up under the hood, right at the outward edge. It draws in air from the hood and then routes it around these channels inside the hood to make sure that they always have good air pressure, and also if there's a little bit of water in the front, it can still pull air from the backside. If you open the hood, you can see the air intakes. On each side there are 2 little stacks, and they call them the Queen Mary because it looks like the smokestacks from the boat. Yesterday it was raining, which is a rarity for Morocco, and the country isn't really set up to deal with rain. And we went through a lot of really horrible roads with water over it, and little streams that had formed out of nowhere, and you just drive straight through it. There's no worry. We weren't close to the maximum depth of the Range Rover, but it's nothing that you'd want to get out and step through. Land Rover was the first company to offer variable terrain mode for the 4-wheel drive settings, where it would change the throttle, change the brakes, change the ride height. With the new Range Rover, they've gone a step further, and it now has an auto mode that will automatically vary all of those things, including locking the center or rear differential. It's taking all different kinds of input from the chassis and making adjustments hundreds of times a second. The interior is all new, of course, and Land Rover says there are 50% fewer buttons in the interior. The funny thing is, I don't miss any buttons. I don't know where all those buttons went. So as you'd expect, the interior is pretty nice. I mean, you have a leather-lined headliner, and it has a 29-speaker stereo. There's speakers everywhere. They're up here behind the sun visors, they're in the back of the seats. There's speakers next to the map lights for the rear seat passengers. The optional stereo in our car is truly ridiculous. It's 1700 watts and it has a 3D surround sound that is probably better than most home theaters. So the Autobiography Edition we're driving has this 2-tone ebony and ivory interior. It's all leather, even the headliner. But there are 17 different interior colors you can choose. We have carbon fiber trim. There are all different kinds of wood you can choose as well. It's a really clean, straightforward interior. There's no clutter. Everything's really easy to find and really easy to manipulate. The center console is pretty much the same. It's very familiar to the old Range Rover, except they've improved it a little bit. The screen is faster, it responds better, and there are these hot buttons on the side that let you jump straight to navigation or audio or the home menu. It also has these extra settings like cameras. There are 5 cameras all around the car, and you can look at them all at once, or you can tap on one and enlarge it so the whole screen's filled up with the camera. When you're off-roading, that lets you look at exactly what you're trying to not hit. The instrument cluster is like in the old Range Rover. It's all digital, but it's just a giant screen. There are no bezels or anything to dress it up, which is kind of a disappointment. It also doesn't give you that much information. In between the tachometer and the speedometer is a little center information display, and it pops up things from time to time like navigation, but you can't program it. and it really seems like a missed opportunity to give more information to the driver. Both the front and rear use air springs and adjustable shock absorbers. That gives you the ride height adjustment, and it's also continually tweaking the ride quality for whatever the conditions might be. The rear suspension is this incredibly compact multi-link setup. One of the things that allowed Land Rover to do was increase the rear seat space to a much greater proportion than the modest increase in wheelbase and overall length. Rear seat legroom is up 4.7 inches, which is huge. The rear seats also have power recline and optional heated and cooled seats. For the first time now, there's an executive seating package as well that's only 2 seats in the rear, with a center console in between. The seats recline more and they can massage. It really has this magic carpet feel. When you're on a rough road and you see a bump coming, you kind of instinctively cringe as you're waiting for the thud as it hits the tire, and then you hit the bump stop and it chucks your head back, and it never really happens. The engines are completely carried over with an 8-speed automatic transmission. The base V8 is 375 horsepower, which curiously is down 10 horsepower, but Land Rover says it's the exact same thing. The supercharged engine is 510 horsepower. The supercharged car I'm driving now does 0 to 60 in less than 5 seconds. It's actually almost dead on with a Porsche Cayenne in terms of power and weight. The previous Range Rover really was heavy compared to everything else in its segment, so it was a lot slower, which was a little bit of a disappointment. When you're spending that much money, you want it to be as fast as everything else that's on the market. Yeah, there are a lot of classic Range Rover things that continue on, like the split tailgate, so it opens up on the top and the bottom. But now it's powered not just at the top, but the bottom as well. So that bottom piece folds down and also winds right back up, and you don't have to do any work. To me, the styling fits a lot better with the overall lineage of Range Rover than the previous generation one. It is softened, but it's also a lot more clean and refined in its overall look. Range Rover has a few classic design cues that continue through all the generations. Horizontal creases along the side, and the floating roof where all the pillars are blacked out, and the clamshell hood. The new Range Rover still has this command seating position where you're up high and you can see over the road very easily. You can also position it when you're crawling around rocks or through tight spaces, and just generally look down on anyone that doesn't have as nice of a car as you. Not all of the styling cues in the Range Rover are concessions to retro or heritage. Take the doors, for example, which extend all the way down to the bottom of the bodywork. There's no sill. So if it's muddy or snowy and you open the door, you don't get your pant leg dirty when you step in and out of it. And most SUVs play off things like ride height and all-wheel drive to have more capability, whether it's used or not. The difference with the Range Rover is that everything has a purpose that keeps it authentic. And it allows you to do things that would seem crazy for a $100,000 luxury vehicle, like climbing around rocks or off-roading at ridiculous angles. I really like this new Range Rover, and of course it's easy to like. But it's not just that. The Range Rover executes all of its capabilities perfectly. Having driven it and seeing and feeling the substantive improvements exceeded any kind of expectation that I would have had for this. It's by far a better Range Rover. I'm Mike Austin. Thanks for watching.